Hi, this is Aditi Katwala for the Conan Crier, and we're proud to present our first ever presidential candidate discussion. The rules are quite simple. I have two students with me who I'll be introducing in just a second, one student representing Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, and the other representing Republican nominee Donald Trump. We'll begin with their opening remarks and why they support their candidate. After that, I'll be asking them 3 questions about their candidate's policies. So if all is good, let's meet our two students. Representing Hillary Clinton, we have senior Michael Kim. Michael, welcome, and how are you?
I'm doing good.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, representing Donald Trump, we have senior Christopher Borrow. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Since everyone is introduced, let's begin. Now remember, each student will have a certain amount of time to tell us why they're supporting either candidate. Michael, let's start with you. Why will you be voting for Hillary Clinton in 6 days?
So the reason why I'd be voting for Hillary Clinton is because she has the most experience I've ever seen in a presidential candidate since George H.W. Bush. He was the vice president to Ronald Reagan, and when he ran in 1988, he won because of his experience and experience under Reagan. Now, Hillary Clinton has been a Secretary of State for 4 years now, and she's been a United States Senator for 8 years, and that's a lot of experience. And no man or woman out of all the presidential candidates this year could speak to the same amount of experience. And I don't even want to start with Donald Trump's experience. So that's one of the reasons why. And also, I believe that Hillary Clinton not only has the experience, but the correct experience. So she has good foreign policy experience and domestic policy experience.
Well, we'll be getting to that in a minute, definitely. And I totally agree with you. She does have a lot of experience. Now, we also want to hear from the other side. So, Chris, why are you going to be voting for Donald Trump next Tuesday?
Well, I'm a couple months too young to vote, but
Okay.
the reasons I do like Donald Trump are mainly his policies. He's a straightforward plan to protect the American people and increase our standing in the world. That's all that he's about: safety and prosperity for the American public. His vision includes increased job growth, improved infrastructure and education, better care for our veterans, protection of the First and Second Amendments, and more opportunities for America's most vulnerable citizens and fair trade deals that would help make the U.S. a better place to live in.
Well, I do want the U.S. a better place to live, and thank you for giving me your opinion on how you support Donald Trump. Now, I do have a few questions for each of you about the policies. We're going to start with domestic and then move into foreign. Now, as high school students vote, they are casting their vote for the person that they think will fix the issues that they currently face. The most popular one is definitely the rising college costs. So my question to both of you is, what will your candidate do to fix the rising cost of education? First, we're going to start with you this time.
Well, Donald Trump will support school choice for all students, especially the impoverished ones who live in inner cities or rural areas. And he will end Common Core, which forces teachers to teach material dictated by bureaucrats and forces each child to be taught in the exact same way, regardless of their skills or learning level. He will also work with the government to reduce university costs without massively increasing taxpayer funding.
Does he have a specific plan of how he's going to work with the government?
He said he's going to work with Congress specifically to see if they can provide tax cuts to school.
Okay, I understand. Thanks, Chris. And Michael, what about Hillary? What is she planning to do?
So Hillary Clinton has detailed policy proposals regarding college costs. So the first thing she's going to do is she's going to subsidize college for all families making under $100,000 per year to public universities. So that's something that came out of the Democratic primaries, and she and Bernie Sanders reached a middle ground, and this is a middle ground that's very acceptable because one of her main arguments was that the children of Donald Trump should not be receiving college education, and I completely agree with that. So she made it so if you make less than $100,000, then the government will subsidize your college education. Now, Chris talked about taxpayer subsidies, and while I do agree it's going to be a large cost, but we need to think of college education as an investment in our future, investment in our children, an investment to classmates of mine and classmates of yours and children all around this school. And when these type of investments are made, there are positive returns. And in the status quo, it's just we see that the cost of college is way too high for people like me, people we know all around us, and that's why Hillary Clinton wants to attack it by subsidizing college for us.
Okay, I guess a question that many people that don't support Hillary Clinton's plan might have is that can the government afford to subsidize for all these people that don't make over $100,000?
That's fair. So first of all, she wants to close a lot of the tax loopholes that the wealthy are exploiting right now, and that's something that's very contentious. But what we see here is Donald Trump admitted that he admitted in a presidential debate that he pays no income taxes. Now that's something that I really disagree with, because there's middle class families, lower class families who pay their fair share of taxes, who pay a proportion of their taxes, but Donald Trump admitted to paying none of his tax, none of his income. So that's something that needs to be fixed, and when that does get fixed, then we can pay for our college education.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Another important issue among young voters that are very focused is the equal representation and treatment of people in the LGBT community, women, and minorities. Michael, we're going to begin with you this time. How will Hillary serve each group and make sure that they're not discriminated against?
Okay, so first of all, Hillary Clinton, for minorities, for her running mate Tim Kaine, speaks fluent Spanish, has a lot of experience as a governor in the state of Virginia, catering to minorities, and that's the most experience as a governor. You get that executive experience that like no senator or no businessman gets, and that's something that's really valuable. And Tim Kaine showed that he was going to cater to minorities, and that's also something Hillary Clinton has a long history of doing. Like her work as Secretary of State, not Secretary of State, First Lady, was geared towards children and minorities, and trying to make a safer place for both those groups, and that's something that we see a long history with. And also, Hillary Clinton has supported LGBT rights as a Secretary of State, and also throughout both her presidential runs in 2008 and 2016. And it's just Hillary Clinton has, as a underrepresented person in her own field, she understands how it is to be a minority, and she can fulfill the needs of many minorities. So I think she can fulfill their needs very well.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, what will Donald Trump do differently than Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration when it comes to the LGBT community, women, and minorities?
Well, Donald Trump was recently, I don't know if you saw, at a Colorado rally of his, he came out on stage with a massive rainbow flag, and the audience just went wild. He was the first Republican candidate for president to outright support the LGBT community. Back in the 1990s, one of his positions was to actually have a transgender beauty queen pageant member who is feeling discriminated herself participate against the wishes of some of his colleagues. He's always had a high respect for people of every single faith, gender, color, skin color, you name it. He hired one of the first female construction managers to build one of his projects, and he was allowing Jewish and African American citizens in his resorts to vacation long before it was a normal thing to do, at the same time that Bill Clinton was part of a white-only resort.
Okay, well, thank you for both your responses. We're going to end this discussion by discussing each candidate's foreign policy. So we're going to begin with you, Chris. What is Donald Trump's central foreign policy for if he becomes the President of the United States?
Donald Trump's policy revolves around protecting America from its enemies, but also not to alienate any of its potential allies.
That's important.
NATO, for example, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a country that pays, I believe, something like 28% of the overall NATO budget, whereas there's a 2% minimum for the overall budget of the organization that so many countries just don't have the funds to pay for. So they count on the United States to help bail them out. We're not going to waste our money protecting countries that refuse to pay in NATO. He would also not bow down and kowtow to regimes such as Iran that Obama has been prevalent to appease. Trump knows that nation building needs to stop, and we need to start supporting democracies instead of listening to the wishes of these countries which are active sponsors of terrorism. We also cannot regard potential allies in Russia and China, the former of which Clinton seems to be keen on starting a war with for whatever reason, as enemies, despite the differences between our countries.
I guess I actually want to ask you a little bit more about your NATO question. So you're saying Donald Trump's central policy is for countries that cannot pay, we're not going to pay for them anymore?
Well, they need to find a way to be able to pay for themselves. The United States is never meant to be a sort of police force. We're not supposed to like crush down on other countries. It's just not our thing. We're democracy, freedom. And if countries cannot afford to be part of this alliance, then it's not the United States' job to bail them out.
Okay, I understand. And what about Hillary's perspective on foreign policy, Michael?
Yeah, so I already said this, but her experience as Secretary of State qualifies her to make a lot of good foreign policy judgments. And I just like to start off by saying that she understands that foreign policy is not a game of risk. Just because some nations don't have enough troops doesn't mean that we should stop protecting them. So first of all, regarding NATO, majority of those nations could not uphold their budget obligations because they were facing economic times, such as Greece. They went into austerity, so they were forced by the European Union to cut down their budget, and this is the reason why that they were not able to meet their NATO obligations. So that, and second of all, many of those nations across in Eastern Europe have attempted to increase their budget, and many of them are actually almost there at that 2% requirement. Now, furthermore, NATO was not built because of the 2% budget requirement. NATO was built because they are a treaty to deter Russia. And once we propose dangerous proposals like withdrawing from NATO, we reduce the whole sanctity of that treaty to nothing. Basically allowing Russia to take over Eastern Europe. The reason why Russia was unable to invade Eastern Europe throughout the entirety of the Cold War was because of NATO. And if we remove the United States from NATO, we basically give them an avenue to take over Eastern Europe. Now, furthermore, you said that Donald Trump doesn't want to alienate foreign nations, but we continually see the problem, like the proposal from NATO that's alienating the content of Europe, and we see that he also called out other nations such as South Korea and Japan because we've been protecting them, but he needs to understand that foreign policy isn't so black and white. That foreign policy, when you make one move, a bunch of concurring moves are made, and a bunch of it's like a domino effect, and he needs to realize that just because on the surface it seems one way, in actuality it's a lot more complicated than that.
That's an interesting response. However, what will Hillary Clinton do that's different? What will she do to help the countries in NATO, for example? Or what will she do to make sure that there's still peace with Russia and China and Iran, North Korea, these nations that we have some risky relationships with?
So first of all, with NATO, she realizes the sanctity of the treaty, so she won't propose anything dangerous like withdrawing from NATO. And so second of all, that leads me to Russia. So she has proposed a no-fly zone in Syria, which is a good move because we need to show the Russians that we're not going to bow down to their requests, and we need to show that Russia needs to respect boundaries, both political and just their foreign relation boundaries. And so with the regimes in Iran and North Korea, the Iran deal that Obama signed was a good move to deter the development of nuclear weapons in Iran, and should be kept because we're not going to get a better deal. The alternatives was either passing that deal or letting Iran enrich uranium and continue their nuclear program. So when we see those are the two paths. We see that obviously the path where Iran stops enriching uranium is a better path for not only the United States but for the world. So Trump said that he'd get rid of the Iran deal, which is basically saying that he'd let Iran get nuclear weapons. So Clinton will not allow that.
So, Chris, clearly from your facial expression and the fact that you do support Donald Trump, I can see you disagree with Michael. So why don't you tell us a little bit of your side on the whole Iran deal and some of the things that he said?
Personally, I was just a little called out when Michael said that they would bow down. They wouldn't bow down to the likes of Russia. Isn't that exactly what we did in Iran? We paid a ransom, $400 million, to a country that sponsors terrorism. What do you think they're going to use it for? Plush kittens? No, they're going to use it to continue to manufacture weapons which might be used against the United States.
So what will Donald Trump do to make sure that that doesn't happen?
One of Donald Trump's policies is to end nation building, basically just to see if these countries are even fit for US intervention, to see if they can hold stable democracies. Honestly, right now at least, Iran is not one of those countries. It's a state sponsor of terrorism. We have dealt with terrorist groups from Iran before. We need to know that the President of the United States does not agree with allowing these people to have money.
Okay, thank you for that response. I'm going to ask 2 more questions. Thank you. So thank you, Chris and Michael. You both have been extremely helpful in this discussion, and hopefully you have helped some undecided CHS seniors on who to vote for this Tuesday. Remember that November 8th, next Tuesday, is the day of the election, so if you are a senior who is 18, please go out and vote. Every vote counts. Both of your perspectives have been extremely insightful, and if you have any questions, please comment below. This is Aditi Katwala for the Conan Crier, signing off.